Thank you, sir.
Thanks, man. That's too kind in lots of ways. Thanks, Pete. Well, thank you to all of you that have come out. It's lovely to see some friendly faces and some new ones, or at least half of them. And it's great to also know that you all have legs. That's important. We've only seen the kind of, getting dressed for the full body is an experience that most of us haven't had to deal with in recent times, so I appreciate you for that. For those of you all watching online, thanks so much also for tuning in, whatever time zone you're in, including, I think, about 20 people in the Vixen Labs office at the moment currently eating pizza and WhatsApping me throughout this presentation, which is going to be, thankfully, on the other phone that I've not held here, so we should stay on track. So when Pete kind of asked me to kind of speak on something this year, it was like, well, what should it be? And a couple of years ago, I did a talk which was trying to kind of be the prediction of where we were going to go in the following 24 months. And most of that was wrong, as you would imagine. We didn't see an awful lot of this coming in June of 2019. So what I want to try and do is make some more predictions for the year ahead, but in three very distinct areas. And so this talk is kind of titled The Voice Forecast, but I'm going to kind of subtitle it Media, Money, and the Metaverse. I think that's probably a good kind of 3M, 3-act structure. All good sermons are written that way. So Pete mentions, so I'm JP. Some things you should know about me is that I'm a dad to 2 young girls who are basically uncontrollable. I think that's a good summary. I've spent a lot of time building this team over the past couple of years with my co-founder, Jen, who unfortunately can't be with us today due to all of the travel restrictions that are imposed upon us. That's been fun. And we've grown a fantastic team of folks in the UK and now also in Germany, which is super exciting as we expand around the world. And we work with a bunch of great brands, as Pete said. Here are some of them. This is a page of impressive logos. Everyone has one. That's ours. And we try and work with kind of people to really help them set the full agenda of what voice is going to do in the years ahead. So that's that. We talk about this idea of being on a mission to help brands and businesses have better conversations, and that's ultimately why I've stayed in this kind of voice game and persisted after working for a bigger brand, is that we believe that voice technology actually at the heart of it is about having great conversations, and that's a more human way of doing things. And so that's why we kind of stick in the game. So this has been an interesting experience, kind of getting on a plane and traveling for 8 hours. Business travel is kind of one of those things that a lot of us used to do a lot of. I used to get on a plane every other week and go to Denmark for like 3 days, and that just seems completely ridiculous at this point. Do you remember the first time that you did any kind of business travel? For those of you who are watching at home, this maybe still feels like a little bit of a distant memory. My first ever experience of kind of going anywhere for business was the first agency that I worked in was one of the big kind of global conglomerates. And we got looked after by this client in a way that I've never really experienced since. Most of the time, the agency were the one paying the way, right? You're kind of doing the courtship dance. And it was flipped on us. We were working for this big consulting company based in Paris. And so myself and 3 of my colleagues were put on first-class Eurostar over to Paris, put up in this fantastic hotel, Le Concorde de Lafayette, on the hill, looking over the city.
Hey, man.
And we were so well looked after, and we spent all day with this fantastic managing director of this company, who I'll kind of nickname, it's not his real name, Francois. It's the most generic French name I can think of. And Francois, to kind of describe him, was kind of like 50% like linebacker, 50% kind of like French bulldog, if that, with a kind of like decent amount of kind of aggressive pit bull kind of thrown into the mix, and a really nice guy, but kind of quite intimidating. And we were invited by Francois. So, when the topic of the evening entertainment kind of came up, he said, "Okay, we will go out on my boat." The accent may get me cancelled. We'll try and avoid that. But we will go out on my boat, and we were okay, great. Francois is going to take us out on the boat. Fantastic. And so later that evening, we're down by the Seine in the kind of the shadow of the Eiffel Tower, and we get on this lovely pleasure cruiser that turns out actually is Francois' actual boat. It's his. And we're followed on board, myself, a couple of colleagues, and about 6 of his entourage and a couple of other managing directors, with these little lovely purple picnic boxes that are opened up with real salt and pepper shakers in them and proper cutlery and about 12 cases of Chateau Petrus, and kind of we all sit down for this lovely dinner on this boat. And then the time comes when Francois kind of pops his head out of the thing and says, "It is time, we go." I say, "Okay, we go." And the staff very venerably kind of head around the edge of the boat and unlash the sides, kind of they take off the strings, the ropes. And Francois says, "Okay, and he throws the thruster, I suppose, or whatever the right kind of word is, of the boat down, and the engine kind of whirs, and we hear this kind of spinning up of the engines, and we begin to kind of drift out into the middle of the river, and then the next thing we all hear is crunch, crank, crunch down one side of the boat. And I turn to my right and see the poles of the adjacent boat being ripped from the deck of the next door boat, because it appears that whilst they unlashed down one side where we were attached to the jetty, they hadn't unlashed from the boat that we were attached to on the other side. And these metal poles start flying, splintering out, and falling into the river. And of course, the thing we all do, naturally, is we look at Francois, kind of like, je ne sais pas. And Francois gets up, looks over at his neighbor, who has now emerged from the next door boat, who is screaming some kind of profanity in French that I will not try and recreate. And all he does is he looks at him and he goes, we'll deal with it tomorrow. Click. We will deal with it tomorrow. I think at the start of the pandemic, this was the attitude we all wish we could have had. Don't worry, it would be fine. Definitely getting cancelled. We will deal with it tomorrow. This is the attempt we had, right? We were like, we're going into the unknown, and we hope that we'll be able to deal with it tomorrow. And unfortunately, we all know, right, that wasn't really an option. It became very evident very quickly that wasn't going to work. And we sit here, kind of 22 odd months later on with, kind of variant number 1700, thinking about, this attitude of we'll deal with it tomorrow. It doesn't seem really possible. We're still in the messy middle, right, of whatever this thing is that we're going through. And I kind of feel that whole analogy is very much for where the voice industry as a whole sits right now. We're in the messy middle. We've seen a lot of players come and try and fail. We've seen John showed you the hype cycle and that trough of disillusionment kind of play itself out. And we're kind of in that steady climb at the moment, back out of whatever the past couple of years has been for us all. And we need to start thinking not about playthings, but about stuff of real importance. And so this three kind of act structure, this kind of idea of media, the money, and the metaverse, I think is hopefully a helpful one as we think about where do we go over the next couple of years. Because what we can't deny is that voice is definitely here. This is data from our own study earlier this year that we conducted with our research partners Delineate to look at the kind of situation of voice right now. And we see, this is becoming a mainstream activity across all device types. This is no longer about smart speakers, but it's about smartphones, it's about connected, it's about hearables, it's about cars, it's about voice everywhere. But what we know is that it is everywhere. And so when you have something of this level of dominance, it's no longer something we can ignore. It's no longer something you can deal with tomorrow. We have to start dealing with it now, because I don't know, for any of you that work either in big businesses or with big businesses, if you're watching online and not being able to get here because your travel restrictions are still holding you back, is that these things take time even when you begin to start, right? They don't suddenly decide and tomorrow we're off to the races. It's politics, it's pondering, and it's a lot of persistence. And we have to get ready. So let's talk about the kind of first area. I think next year will be a year where we see voice and media really accelerate. We've seen that this has been the case for some time. New formats have been emerging like crazy under the pandemic. We've been selling devices left, right, and center. I mean, crikey, even Facebook managed to sell some. I mean, that was impressive, right? How many of you bought a Portal 24 months ago? Not many. How many? They managed to sell some out so many that they actually thought it was a good idea to make another one. That may be questionable. New media formats have been springing up like crazy. If you were did anything with audiences or public speaking, if you are currently watching this as a kind of thought leader of some description, or a comedian or anyone else, or a US president, you had two options. You either write a book or you create a podcast. And some of them did both. Jerry's been kind of at this game for some time, and Obama decided it was a good idea. If anyone listened to this, I'm really sorry. That was a tough listen. No offense to the president, he tried, but there are better conversations out there to be had. Everyone's had a go at it. And what we found over the past couple of years is that we were given creative license and a lot of time to, go into basically every possible microcosm of media and have a go, right? Every possible format that you could imagine that could be explored was, and hopefully is no longer being explored. And we've gone really, really deep into the subcultures that none of us even dared to imagine might exist. And I think what we're going to see in the next 12 to 24 months is what I'm going to call the kind of the great unniching, because what we do know is that people are looking for these niches. They're looking for finding the content that they want, and they want it right now, in the right place, at the right time, and with zero friction. From our own study again, we see that 60% of people are looking for music from their favorite artists, and 50% of people are going to browse a streaming service of some description, be that TV or audio. And we heard the same thing this morning if you've been watching from the folks at TuneIn, massive increase in this. Spotify's just released their own stats this morning as well, showing, again, a massive increase in people browsing via smart speaker and looking for music and content of all sorts. We know this is happening, but I think what we're finding is that because we've gone down every possible content rabbit hole of the past couple of years, one of the big things that we've managed to lose is essentially that kind of shared experience. And as the world comes back together in whatever format that's going to look like, be that in-person, hybrid, remote, or any combination of the above, we are going to need those kind of cultural norms to come back. We're going to need those water cooler moments, which may be being conducted over Zoom still, but we're going to need them. We're going to need to come back together. And you can't do that if I keep on turning to you and say, hey, have you listened to that thing? And you go, nope. It's too difficult. We've got too many micro, kind of communities to be a part of. And I think what we're actually going to see is a rebounding back to some of these kind of non-niches, these kind of much bigger cultural phenomenon platforms. Kind of take great shows like, Succession, for example, at the moment. Kind of where we're all kind of back watching this family fighting over big industrial media, or the phenomenon that's been Squid Game, and kind of how a small show from Korea can kind of get us all basically concerned that we're living through the apocalypse. Like this stuff brings us back together, and we need these kind of big societal, cultural media pieces. And I think when you want to find those things, you want to make sure you get them straight away. And voice potentially has the power to do that. You see, the thing that most of us have forgotten about is while we were off building interesting little playthings over in the corner and creative content experiences that people used once or more likely never found in the first place because no one spent any money to tell them about it, was that actually what needed to be going on under the hood was paying a lot more detail to metadata. Metadata, unfortunately, it's not sexy, but it's the thing that makes the web go around. It kind of actually keeps the wheels in motion. And if it's not well structured right now, you are already behind. And this matters whether you're talking about third-party platform content holders, whether that's OTT TV services, music streamers, or everything else in between. But it also matters massively on the web. And this is where, if you pay attention to what Google at the moment is really thinking about, you don't hear them talking about actions all that much. What we're hearing them talk about is mobile and search time and time again. And so, if we're going to spend time with doing anything on the web, we're going to start thinking about how we actually get to content. And that means the metadata needs to kind of work for us. And that brings me to the second topic, which is obviously once we go searching for something, we've got to kind of have a way of paying for it. And when it comes to our money, this really kind of is where the rubber hits the road. And so in 2022, I think we see that voice and the way in which we spend, the way in which we shop, and particularly the way in which we do customer service is going to have some major ramifications for all of us in an industry as we basically, again, start to look for the real use cases, which are the ones that drive the wheels of business. No one's going to keep playing in the innovation space for another year. We have to start making this stuff really impact lines of business and affect the top, middle, and bottom lines. Pick whichever one you're interested in. And I think that we've been seeing that people have elevated customer experiences. Pete mentioned in the intro, my background, I worked at Lego for a few years. And for those of you that have ever built, hands up in the room, how many of you have kind of built a Lego set in the past few years? Well, I could go with ever, but certainly in the last few years. Okay, that's interesting because actually a big demographic of you may have even built them for yourselves now, not just for your kids. Adult Lego sets have shot up in popularity during the pandemic. But what you'll find is that when you've built a Lego set, even the smallest of them, what do you have left over when you're done? There's always a few little small pieces left over, right? Now, a company that's kind of in the multi-billion Danish krone around the world and exports bricks that are manufactured within 3 microns of tolerance, which is kind of less than the human hair. Do you not think that they could work out how to make sure there weren't spare parts in the box? Do you not think that they've got the technology? Of course they do. They can weigh these things down to the absolute microgram, but that's not the reason that they're in there. Or it might be because you might have lost one in the building process, right?
Everyone.
Well, they don't know which one you've lost, so how do they know the one they've thrown in the box is the right one? It's none of those reasons why those extra bricks are in the box. It's because those extra little bricks in the box add up to something over time. They add up to a promise that you could do something else with them. They add up to the ability to be creative, right? Those little extra ones, you add an extra brick into that combination, and the amount of different ways you could have built the thing you've just finished grows exponentially. If you have 6 bricks of the same kind and size and combine them, how many combinations do you think exist? Anyone want to shout it out in the room or put it in the chat if you're listening online? How many combinations from 6 bricks?
A lot.
A lot? I'll tell you, it's 996 million combinations. Add one more to that, and the number doesn't fit on a calculator. So those extra bricks, they speak to an interesting promise, right? They promise that there is more than you can do with this product. And it costs them almost nothing to do it on the individual box, but it costs massively on the huge scale. And it overpromises. And the thing that we found, I think, a lot in recent times is that voice experiences, they've overpromised and under-delivered a lot of these experiences. Why? Because actually most of them haven't been designed all that well. Most of them haven't really been thought through to the nth degree because they were pilots. How many people have worked on a pilot project in the past few years? Yeah. The problem with pilots is that if there's no plane still in the sky at the end of the journey, you've got a real problem, no matter how good the pilot was that was flying it. Pilots are interesting, but we've seen that customer experience really has pushed the boundaries, and people have heightened experience, heightened expectation, and they expect you not to only overpromise, but also over-deliver, and most of the time we've not seen that happen. And so what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing massive investment right now by retailers. We already heard from some of the other speakers today, and what other stages you're watching online, that we're seeing a lot of consolidation in the market right now. Take one of the most kind of recent acquisitions, Botmock kind of being taken in-house by the folks at Walmart. Why? Because actually the experience needs to be elevated. Customer service needs to be elevated. The way in which we access and control our shopping and spending needs to be elevated. And right now, most of the time, that can't be done just by fiddling around the edges. We need to bring experience in-house. So I think we're going to see more and more of this happening in the industry. And for those of you that are running startups and conversational design tools and all of the things that sit in this stack, then good for you. There might be an opportunity there. But there's only so many of these experiences that can exist without us kind of seeing that great leveling up. And I think over the next 24 months, that's going to happen because more form factors are coming, right? As we see more devices everywhere, this is coming to the point of voice everywhere is an inevitability. And so whether that's kind of on the screen in your kitchen, or whether it's in your car, or whether it's in the street, or in the the mobile kiosk, wherever it might be, that expectation is growing with customers quite drastically, and we need to see an improvement in that overall. We're seeing that the expansion beyond just the core platforms that we've all known is absolutely here and now, and some of it is being built on their existing stack. This example here from it, for those of you who've seen it, is Hey Disney. Customer experiences now with custom voices become ever more important, and we'll come to that more in a moment. But this expectation that I can do everything and that it just works is there. And that the magic to the kingdom here is absolutely a core part of that proposition. What we've seen from the research is that there is a growing expectation of what people can do with these devices. Okay? The primary way at the moment, in the way in which most people find out what they can do with their voice with a device, is trial and error. And that's good. It shows a very leaned in, very active customer, one that's willing to have a go and keep having a go. But the lowest form of the way in which people find out about these experiences is through paid, owned, and earned marketing, and that's a problem. That's a real problem because it means that brands at the moment have no control over the way in which people are finding these things, and it means that either A, they're underinvesting, or B, doing it badly, and neither of those are great outcomes for the industry, right? We need people to be investing in this because what we see is actually that at all parts of the journey when people are searching, whether that's searching for kind of general product information, whether it's searching for a local business, if you've got that's a local business, or it might be the local outlet of your national business, or whether it's actually down in the bottom end of here, which is still 40% of people making purchases, which is nothing to sniff at for a channel that's still in such an early stage as it is today. We are seeing that all parts of the curve is being influenced, and people are looking for ways to search for the information, find the right person, and spend their money. And that means that if that expectation is high, it makes a real question that if you're a brand or a business and spending no attention at the moment on what this looks like, we are, I think, just a few short years away from it will be odd. I was talking to someone outside. It will be odd right now, right, if a brand that you know of doesn't have an Instagram account. It will be odd in short order whether I can't track my order, when I can't find the location of this thing, or I can't ask basic information and questions, and potentially even purchase from a major brand. And this is an expectation that customers begin to have. And so that pressure, I think, is going to be really felt in the next year or so. Just to kind of bring this to life, right now from our own research across a number of different client projects we're doing in the voice search space, we're finding that over 80% of kind of voice consumers, they're searching for product information. But in about 90% of cases, the brand that is related to that subject matter doesn't own the result when it comes to a voice search. And that's a problem. It's going to the aggregators, it's going to Wikipedia, it's going to all manner of other places, but it sure as hell isn't coming to the brand site. Just as a little example here, right now, so many of you I'm sure familiar with things like this type of query, right? Pretty typical. What's the best way to get a stain out of a shirt? No brand in this point. If you're at P&G, Johnson & Johnson, or any of these other kind of big conglomerates, this should probably worry you. It would keep me up at night if I was the brand manager of, kind of Omo or something like that. Take that exact point, is that when customers actually go looking for information, they actually even search for brands. And that's great if you know whether or not, the kind of brand query is there. For example, is dirt good versus dirt is good? How many of you know Omo's kind of campaign in this space, right? Dirt is good, great. Shows up nice and high. But how many of you are going and asking that question in that parlance to a voice assistant anytime now? We don't talk the way that brands talk to us. We talk in natural language. That's the core to our industry. And so when we go ask questions like, is dirt good? Not an awful lot happening here. This is a problem, right? This is a problem not only for the brands at the other end of it, but it's a problem for consumers because it diminishes trust and it lowers their expectation. And if we as an industry want to keep raising that bar, this is not helping us. We need people to get on board with this problem. So, the third area. How many of you are excited about the metaverse? I'm worried for you. Not because I don't think it's going to happen. Whether we end up spending 10, 20, 30 minutes a day wearing some kind of monstrosity attached to our heads or not, that's kind of really not my point. But my point is that the metaverse is an element of, kind of inevitability. We can't get away entirely from the fact that this is coming at us in lots of different ways. There is no one metaverse. I think we all know that. There are many different permutations of it, and depending on which one you're up for, just depends on how scared you are. The idea that we might kind of walk around with these devices attached to our faces, I think, is an inevitability. I don't think Facebook will be the ones that are going to crack it anytime soon, but certainly when you kind of look at AirPods as a business, if you broke that out from Apple today, it's bigger than NVIDIA or Adobe on the stock market. AirPods alone as a business unit. And why? Because it is the training wheels for us to talk to the thing attached to our face to, in the future, control the metaverse. You're not going to go wandering around, smudging and swiping up your AR glasses in order to be able to control it. Voice is the natural paradigm for controlling the metaverse. And whatever that device looks like, whether it's sunglasses with cameras, sunglasses without cameras, retinal projection, I don't know. Whatever it is, we can inevitably see that voice will become a primary control paradigm for that. We're not going to be kind of sitting there typing into virtual keyboards and moving around virtual mice in the metaverse. I mean, Microsoft seemed to have a slightly different view of this whole thing, which I'm not quite sure on. I mean, it's quite nice to see that even in the metaverse, none of us have legs. I mean, that's important. And I really thought that they might have come up with something a bit more of an imaginative kind of space for meetings than this virtual boardroom. I mean, really, is that like the best we can do? But, fair enough. We might want to spend some time doing kind of virtual presence with one another. But I want to posit a theory. It's like, in the future where you spend any amount of time in this environment, what remains constant to you? What remains a core part of your identity? Well, it's not the kind of, freshly minted NFT of your Adidas jacket that you've just purchased on OpenSea. And it's probably not also the kind of, predefined Microsoft Teams avatar that was given to you. But one of the things that does remain constant is your voice and the voice of the people that you're interacting with. The promise of the metaverse is not that we are kind of going into some lovely asynchronous kind of like doom scrolling through Slack. The whole point is about presence. The whole point is about synchronicity and being there together in an experience. And for that, we have to be using our voices to communicate. It's the only way that it travels in that space. And that creates both a massive opportunity for us in terms of control and identity, but it also creates a massive problem. Is that in a world where synthetic voice is absolutely coming to us, and I'll come to that in a minute, it also presents a really interesting question is, well, how valuable is your voice? How valuable is it that you know and own that voice? Some of you have already seen some demos, and you're going to see some demos over the next couple of days of the fantastic work done by the guys at Marvel AI, which is now part of Veritone. And I'm very excited that today we announced the strategic partnership between Veritone and Vixen Labs to help bring synthetic voice and kind of the protection of the sonic identity for a lot of brands to conversational experiences, and we're excited to kind of bring that to bear. But it does raise an interesting question, doesn't it? Is that in a world where any voice can be recreated, how do I know when I'm speaking to you in this metaverse that it's you? That presents some really interesting challenges, I think, ethically, and I'm excited about the work that the Open Voice Network is doing in trying to set some standards for this stuff, and if you're not part of that, please do join those ethics communities, and particularly looking at the privacy work that Michael and the team are doing. But this presents some interesting challenges for us in the next 22 to 24 months. Whether or not you're buying any of these, how many of you own a vFriend? Or have tried? No, exactly. None of us have got that kind of Ethereum cash. Whether you're buying kind of like digital artwork or not, I think one thing that Gary's onto in this kind of whole world is that there is a kind of an NFV, but it's not a kind of, a passionate parrot or a happy hedgehog or whatever it might be. I think there is a question about non-fungible voices. Because actually, and I'm coining that term, thank you if anyone's this is being recorded. It's not yet on the blockchain, but we'll get it there. I think that the non-fungible voice may actually become one of our biggest tokens of identity in the future, because this is actually crucial if we want to unlock digital shopping, if we want to unlock things like digital banking, access to services in the metaverse. How will we do persistence? How will we do identity? How will we do synchronicity? It's with our voices. And we need to find ways of securing them, making them accessible and shareable, and potentially monetizable, because that's obviously a massive opportunity for any of us that have an interest in the things that we say and the way in which we say them. So media, money, the metaverse, these are the kind of core things I think we see over the next couple of years. And I would just invite you that if you're interested in digging into these topics further, I commend the research that we did earlier this year, again supported by the Open Voice Network, the Voice Consumer Index. You can find that on the link on Hoover. It's at vixenlabs.co/VCI. You can go download it from there for free, the white paper, the deck, and everything else. But I hope that you are excited as I am, but realistic about where this goes. We have to make this not just a plaything. We have to go for productivity, we have to go with passion, and we have to go with persistence. Because this is the next generation. This is, you're excited about Web 3 or Web 3.0. I'm excited about Voice 2.0, and it starts in 2022.